Amber, I'm testing audio.
Speak into the mic.
So you're driving the Walter White mobile for the progressive dinner, huh? Yeah.
Best place to have the bar.
Okay. Thank you. Cameras.
Look for you, buddy.
Morning.
Good. Good. Do this.
Ready to rock and roll. Yep. Okay. Yeah. I don't even think that Idaho Power. Their maps of all their infrastructure. It's like critical.
Absolutely. I don't know. It's weird. Shit, they already like passed ours. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna call. I'll call as soon as we're ready. Mm-hmm. The call. We don't have the people to do all that.
It's here for tech support, and if I have an issue with the GIS map. Yes, it is.
I will.
Oh man! Wow. Hmm? Yeah. Sorry. Yep. Yep. But I figured on the 14th we'll have to jet out early because we have a commitment here. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll drive.
I wore the hat, that camera would have been right there. Thank you.
Just in case. That's the only one you can do?
We're gonna need it.
Bruce said he's in the audience.
Oh, don't apologize to me. It's for you.
Supposed to use it.
I don't know.
If he's having insomnia problems.
Roll.
Present.
Present.
Present. Present. Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum for Friday, April 3rd, 2026, 9th, well, I don't know what, 32, 31. Rundown. Before we get into this, council, I want to suspend Robert's rules because this is a workshop. I want you able to fire questions at will. So with that, we're going to run down to conflict of interest. Has any council received information, any to or otherwise had any contact with any person regarding any items on the city council agenda? If so, please set forth nature of the contact.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Sanders,
I've had contacts from Mr. Lamb and Mr. Newton.
Mayor.
Councilwoman Workla,
The same.
okay, Councilman McCarthy,
Same.
Councilman Harjo.
I have one from.
All right, we're going to run down to the agenda items, action items, acknowledge and cure an inadvertent open meeting law violation that occurred on March 31st, 2026. Council, or I'll say Councilor Schroeder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So
This was a new one. This is one I haven't encountered before. It's the most benign and least worrisome of anything that could be construed as an open meeting law violation. And I want to clarify, make it crystal clear for the record that no member of the city council committed an open meeting law violation, not Councilman Sanders, nor Councilman McCarthy, Workla, or Harjo. What happened was Councilman Sanders was engaged in a dialogue with a constituent and shared thoughts with that constituent about what he thought about the fiber optic system. That constituent then took the councilman's opining and distributed it to the remainder of the council. So in the most technical of fashions, that can be construed as a receipt of deliberation because the remaining three of you then heard Councilman Sanders' arguments, opinions, or whatever back to the constituent. This is one that I don't think the open meeting law contemplated. Nonetheless, if you read the definitions and you read the statute, and so both Councilman McCarthy and Councilman work to this, and so out of an abundance of caution, recommended that you do an open meeting law violation cure. And again, the legal analysis there is what is the risk to the client being the city of Mountain Home. What is legal risk? Although the legal risk of an open meeting law violation and its penalties is very remote, legal risk for any open meeting law violation still remains. The ability of a person complaining about it to undo any decision that is related to it. So that's my legal advice to my client, and it's my recommendation that you cure it. All you have to do is say, we did it, we got emails, and we're done. But again, no member of the city council did anything wrong, particularly Councilman Sanders. It's perfectly lawful for you to engage with your constituents back and forth, so, without committing an open meeting. And I stand for any questions or accusations.
All right, Council.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Sanders.
I'm sorry, you suspended Roberts, didn't you?
Yeah.
Before we started this. Jeff, are we going to need a standing agenda item now?
No.
Because
This hasn't happened before. I doubt it'll happen again. I don't think you need a standing agenda. I really don't. I think, and I would contrast this to the email that you all received, and I received a copy of from Mr. Lamb. That was a direct email simply from a constituent to council members. Those you could have replied to. Had it been a reply all with, and this is the key difference, with, oh, William, I wholeheartedly agree, and those other councilmen are a bunch of idiots, blah, blah, blah. Now we're there if everybody sees it. But the thing is, there's deliberation that occurs outside of the meeting. So no, I don't anticipate, because in however many years of both being on a city council and becoming an attorney and representing 16 cities, this is the first one of these I've seen. I don't suspect it'll be the last, but now it's easy to know what to do. So.
And the key behind this was one of the other council members threw up the red flag and said, we need to look at this.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
So good on the council for being sensitive to it, but also, you know, actions of a third party, unless we catch it, are not going to be our responsibility.
Well, Mr. Mayor, that goes directly to whether this was done in good or bad faith, and so the relative harm is zero. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're going to run down to action item number 2, workshop, city fiber optic utility discussion with the city council and staff. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Curtis, the floor, and Mr. Katz, the floor is yours.
I was under the impression that Mr. Short.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Shore is going to do it.
So what I want to do is just like, there's some important, the release.
If city.
Oh,
Go ahead. I'm gonna go try to call Bruce. I'm gonna make sure Amber, we're
So, response, Councilman Workla had said that she would have some questions of legal, and then I reviewed a whole bunch of email. I started to realize, both in this context, and there's, I think I can clarify a bunch of legal questions for you, and then leave the policy stuff to you. Put you completely. So there's two really important. One, real big basic difference between Title 10, which was adopted via. Let me start with the real difference between an ordinance and a code. So some ordinances have to be codified, and they're part of your code. Amend those ordinances, you amend that code, you pass an ordinance amending the code. Other ordinances that you enact authorize you to do something, that set a budget, that annex property, create something. Those aren't codified and they're not part. That's an important distinction. When the word ordinance this or ordinance that around, because that's really relevant to this. Your LID involved two ordinances. Title 10 had one ordinance that enacted Title. So I want to explain the difference for you and your constituents, the difference between Title 10, what it authorizes, what it commands, prohibits, and so forth, and what it doesn't, and then what the legal structure is of a local. So in Ordinance 1706, which was adopted in 2021, created Title 10, the city's municipal fiber optic system. You can see that. You'll see Ordinance, 1709, February 8th, 20. This is the entirety of Title 10. This is all of it. 100% of Title 10 in the city's municipal fiber. You can consider this a duplicate of something like your city's water system or your city's wastewater system. Some ways it's analogous to your city. This governs and regulates the operation of a city utility. It's also analogs to this in other cities that have electrical power plants or are a power utility. Idaho Falls. So you created a system by which you can deliver something to by enacting Title. How do you do that? How do you get that system to somebody? There's a number of ways to do it. The city could take money out of its general fund and dig a big ditch and put a thing down and make it. Or the mechanism under Chapter 17 of Title 50, a copy of which create a local improvement district to assess those costs. The two things are different. No part of Title 10 commands, directs, prohibits, allows use of LIDs. That's a totally separate function. Title 10 says nothing about a local. It's silent on it. That's a very important legal distinction. It's important in a number of ways. It's important legally in terms of what your constituents are asking you for, whether or not you're commanded to or prohibited from doing. And it's also doubly important in when you are crunching numbers and evaluating money. A local improvement district exists through the passage of a resolution saying, hey, we're gonna, enactment of an ordinance, here we go, the enactment of a, here's your time to protest, and the closing of it out and going, okay, everybody owes me $1,500. That money is a whole different animal, money, or should be, than the daily operations of the system that you've created. Those are two different things. So the other thing, so just keep that distinction in the front of your head and have this in front of you all the time when people are talking about it or when you're talking about it. It's very helpful. It's not very long. It's easy to go to. Just yesterday, Wednesday, I went to a city where they had just hired a code enforcement person. Mayor and that code enforcement person and I drove around looking at various targets of nuisances. And we had it with us in the car. Like, here's the definition: garbage, junk, weeds. It's useful to have it. So, any questions? Yes.
So when we receive a statement in an email from a citizen, it says, right now a small group of residents have access to the city's utility providing faster and cheaper fiber internet. That is not fair and it is not consistent with the city's Title 10. That statement isn't applicable to what you're saying, correct?
That's right. Okay. That statement is
Well,
Well,
Go ahead.
10-1-4 says no obligation to serve.
Well, I got to clarify that for you, but let's get back to. So that's what's important, and it's important to have this tool at your disposal so you can help your constituents. So I'll give you this analogy. I have some cities that don't have a water that I represent. I have a city that has an individual single well, and it has limited by state law to 20. If the city creates a water system, so in the one city that has 25, there are other people we like to serve under no compulsion to do. What would be the mechanism to them? Perhaps the creation of a local. So patch. If the city converted, if the cities with no municipal water system, the city creates. Again, the same analogy applies in exactly the same way. But if parts of that city, which could be 5 or 6 miles long, are far too distant, again, making it available to you. But Title 10 clearly says in 10.1.8, Mr. Mayor, fiber optic access may be supplied under a given rate schedule, provided that the fiber optic system can meet the requirements of the rate schedule applicable. City shall not be obligated to construct extensions or install additional facilities necessary to meet a customer's needs authorized by the so forth. The no requirement to serve in 10.1.4 is the ASP, I think. Again, this is yours. This is your product. You enacted it, or you're the extension of the people. Free to amend this at any point in time. This is not an ordinance that falls under one of the public hearings. So you bang out an amendment, change this any way you want, as long as this is the system in which you deliver fiber optic to your citizens. The way they get those connections be done through a variety of mechanisms. One you've chosen to do it. When this was enacted, I believe, I don't know, and this is a policy thing, any of this catch up just to get you the legal underpinnings. I'm going to sit out all the financial stuff. I don't know anything. So, the expectation was you would create, I think, LIDs in chunks to get it out there to see if the first. So I think it's important to note when there are thoughts that there's part of this that isn't paying its way or is upside down. Know that from the outset, when you create an LID, it balances at 0 the minute the ink is dry on the closing. There's an obligation, which is a tax assessment, which is a levied tax on that property to make it pay total dollar amount of the bond or whatever obligation is issued. That part is a net zero and must be. Now, what happened accounting-wise, I don't know, but I'm just telling you from a legal perspective, creation of an LID creates net zero. The city's free to put extra money into it to make the amount obligated to those benefited property less. The concept is, I'm going to make a square, I'm going to divide it up into every single piece of property, dollar amount that's going to cost to make this thing that goes to each piece. Divide it out and it goes on your tax roll. That's the concept of local improvement district, which has been in existence in Idaho code since that. This is a kooky thing. Been around a long. It's been litigated. There's plenty of ways for people to object. So some of the confusion that has occurred legal perspective over the years of this thing's existence. Pass a resolution, you set a public hearing, everybody has a chance to come and complain, do an ordinance. The ordinance says, here you are. It has a legal description of all the properties. Everybody has plenty of individual mailings. Then there's the assessment roll. That's a second set of public hearings. Hey, this is what the assessment's going to be. And it has not just the legal description of the property, but it has everybody by name, including an individual. Just so you know that's if you're gonna do another one of these, everybody that's in it is protected. Ability to say, in this case, many cases, cities can do an LID for streets or other things. You don't have a choice. It's getting assessed. You're all benefiting from it. You have to establish a method of calculating the benefit. So,
But this one is the opt-in, opt-out. If you don't want it, you don't have
right. So I had a couple of answers to some of the questions that I considered legal questions regarding this back and forth, and some of it was that. So one of them, I'll just go through these real quick, and then if you have other questions of me, please ask me, and then shut up. I won't. One, the constituent asked the specific reasons LID2 was voted down. That's a policy question to be answered by the elected officials. And perhaps there was confusion about the difference between Title 10 and an LID, but I'll leave it. Identification of specific sections of Title 10 that the council relied upon in making it. So my answer to that, which is what I just explained, Title 10 governs the operation of the system. It doesn't govern the formation of local improvement districts. Legal bases, the governing body of a municipality may create local improvement districts. There is a provision where a group of citizens can petition to create. 60% of the people in a identified geographic area can come to you and go, hey, we want this. So there's a mechanism for them to do it absent your action. It'll ultimately require your action, but they can petition you. So there's a tool in the constituents toolbox to say, hey, come on, let's do this if they want. Explain how it's fair that this public utility service is currently provided exclusively to members of LID1. I think I kind of explained that. In other words, while the rest of the town's residents, many of whom have actively requested and are waiting for access, continue to be excluded. They're simply excluded because you put the infrastructure in place to serve that one. There would be an infrastructure cost to deliver it to someone else, and that would require either them to petition, the city to expend the funds to put the infrastructure, or the creation of another. But that doesn't mandate you. It isn't the case that people being improperly denied access to need to connect. It's also completely analogous to electrical service. I grew up in rural Idaho, brought the Rural Electrification Administration online, utility, which is electricity. They paid all those costs, and at some point, those utilities quit doing it. If you buy a piece of property that's far from the closest line, you pay for that. So that's someone isn't close enough, we can't get it to them, and we're obligation to provide it. LID1 provided that access to those areas, and perhaps the city provided access to its own properties, maybe or maybe not. So the city's under no legal obligation to extend this infrastructure beyond the existing LID. It's analogous to an area lacking pipe for gas or for water. The customer may have a right to connect to the system, but only insofar as there's connectivity adjacent to their property, and then they must pay any place. So there are people within LID1 that maybe aren't connected. Same way, you buy a lot and you want to hook the city water system to pay some money. Clarifications requested as to the basis for unequal availability and how restricting it aligns with the principles of fair and equitable access. Same explanation, same thing. It's unfair in that there's just limitations on how far it went with an existing. Puts the city in a position to either do another one or the service area is restricted by lack of infrastructure. What is happening is when new subdivisions are created, I think that's part of Title 10, they have to put it in so that infrastructure is there. Because this matter directly involves the implementation of a city ordinance and decisions made by elected officials, I request the council's explanation. So there was an ordinance creating Title 10. That created the fiber optic function of the city. It didn't create an LID, nor did it create any obligation on the part of the city to create. There was then adopted a resolution, section ordinances creating and finalizing the assessments, but it's wholly separate from the operation. So, let's see. Any other legal questions about that concept?
Layered down, Schroeder, when we were looking at this then, cost for building that infrastructure, that's a zero net sum out of an LID, correct?
Could be.
Okay. You go into O&M, and fees associated with continued maintenance and operations, that's set by the council under the ordinance in Title 10.
Could be.
Set by resolution, authorized by.
Yeah.
And it's in Title 10.
So how we go about funding the infrastructure or the O&M, we have different sections of code that can be used to do that with, one being the ordinance for the O&M, the other one way of doing a initial build out LID. Correct?
Yes, that's for the capital. So this is where the difference between capital and non-capital expense.
So you just made a comment that caught my attention, and that was when we do an assessment, zero out an LID, if individuals that were in the area of that LID, that service area, come back after we close it and desire connection, how are they assessed?
They're not assessed. They pay a direct connection fee. They were not initially included in the bound.
Sorry, I think Councilman Sanders was asking if they are in the LI.
Well,
Well, they pay the full freight,
then, yeah, then they pay the full.
the 36, right? So where the normal person in the LID would pay the 32.28, that if they jumped on the platform. Anybody else, if we closed it out, they're paying the 3,600 flat rate. And if they're in the LID and they're, what is it, 100 feet past it, they pay by foot then. 36 plus per foot.
We have had several do that.
Thank you.
On that 3,600, how was that calculated? It's just an assessment. City?
I think when we initially started it, we said, hey, and we got Bruce Patterson here too. When we initially started, we thought, okay, we're gonna put the LID assessment at like 35 to like $4,000 or 5,000 in the beginning. That was kind of where we started it. And then how did we get to 36? That's a good question. Oh, that's right. Cost of material and labor.
Divided out by the potential.
Yes.
Of what the pre-signups were.
But it's within the footage at the, like it's a generalized footage, and then exceeding that footage, which Katz can speak on, then it becomes where we bill you by the fee in excess.
$20 a foot.
After the 100 feet?
I think we have two different forms. One that shows what the fees are, and then the other form that we have that says fees explained, basically. And so it kind of gives a little bit of a description under each one of them. I could get like.
Those are set by.
In the LID 1 was the assessed cost based upon an equal distribution of that cost across those that signed up for it.
Yes.
Yes.
So, in a new LID, again, we're going to be looking at, there were a new LID, be looking at new labor and material costs because they weren't the same as the original. Everything's gone up, so I don't see why stuff with fiber would be any different. But say you have a greater number of people who sign up for it, and as a result, the assessment winds up being $2,800. Is that luck of the draw for the people who signed up when? Any LIDs?
Somebody hand me my title 50, chapter 7.
Said they'll speak on the.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Yes.
the assessed amount is proportionate to the formulation of the project cost divided by the number of takers within the LID. And it's evenly distributed. It's not, the LID assessment is not preset. You have the general understanding of it should, by ways of measurement and understanding how much material cost is, labor cost and those kind of things, the boundary of the LID, the number of potential addresses that could receive, then you take the number of those properties that take fiber. At the end, you tally the total project cost, you divide by the number of takers, that gives you the flat assessment across any taker within the boundary of the LID during that time period.
Yeah, it includes the cost of the connection for each constituent plus the cost of putting the trans line in, the bulk line in.
Yep.
Yes.
All middle mile and end mile construction.
Bruce, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. So you're basically touching on exactly the right thing, and your attorney's there. He can speak to this. The question becomes, how do you charge a connect fee for water? How do you charge those things? Because the line got run by the developer and you charge for a connect fee. And that is the basis for how you calculate what's the value of the portion of the system they're connecting to. So as they consume assets within your system, there's a value to that. We tend to think of that in terms of footage, but we all recognize that whether the lot is on the edge of the development or in the far back end, the connect fee is the same. That's the nature of utility. You average it. So that number that you're charging for the connect fee is a fee that the council needs to come up with and agree on in terms of what is the value of the system. As you weigh that out, it seems reasonable that you would look at what it cost those that participated in the LID to connect. And it seems reasonable that that's the value of that portion of the system. I would point out to you that if people join the LID, they fund it and they're responsible for getting it. And if by waiting, I join later and pay a lesser amount, likely that is not fair. So the fee is based on those reasonable assumptions.
So to clarify Councilman Sanders' question, the people within the existing LID are going to be assessed, not assessed. Assessed, well, the original participants are assessed. Later participants that want to buy in will buy in at a rate buying into the system. That may be different from the original one. It may be the same. I would think the easy math is charge them exactly the same, or maybe some dividend of saying, because remember, 4 people split up a pizza, 25%. If 3 people, it's 33%. So your number of participants is a factor here. But getting to LA, there's no way to know what the assessment is going to be for a property owner in LID 2 if you create one without knowing the number of homes and then the engineer. And here's the part that's important, 50-1710. Or so after you've done a resolution, you've heard all the protests, you have a public hearing. If after the hearing on the creation of the district, the council finds the district will be for the best interest of the property affected, that there is a reasonable probability that the obligations of the district will be paid, and C, the value of the property within the district is, including the proposed improvements, is sufficient, it shall then enact an ordinance providing for such a district and providing for improvements and creating a district, which shall include all of the property within said district in accordance with the findings, and said ordinance shall set forth the boundaries, provide the improvements which shall be made, and state that the total cost and expenses thereof shall be assessed according to the percentage or calculation mentioned on all benefited property by using the method of assessment contemplated in the notice of intention, subject to any variation as a result of the council's determining that the benefits to be derived by certain lots or parcels of property warrant such variations. And then the council may either purchase, acquire, or construct the improvements. The council shall appoint an engineer, and if the council elects to construct the improvements, the engineer shall have prepared the necessary plans and specifications. So that's, so you would have to do the same process for LID 1 for an LID 2, and those numbers, again, separate and apart from the O&M of the utility, whole different animal, although it'll change because now you're gonna have more customers, you have to change that. But for the purposes of whether or not you should enact another LID, there's no way to know until you count up the number of houses and how many miles of street you have to rip up and put the stuff in and lawns you gotta buy and all that to know what that number is. There's no way to say it's gonna be anything like 3,500. And if a person in LID two is paying less, it could be the case that you have so many more customers and you've divided over that fixed cost, it could be lower.
So Jeff, are LIDs established geographically?
Yes.
Yes.
So anybody that fell inside LID one is not eligible for LID two, or can they overlap?
No.
Unless they geographically overlap, which would
There's a
Primarily
provision
not.
in here where you can geographically grab things, but that's well outside the scope of this. That wouldn't affect legal questions regarding. LID two wouldn't take anything inside the boundaries of, LID one calls out parcel lots, calls out specific participants by name and by property number who are in LID one. And then the geographic boundary inside LID one, if those people aren't included in it because they opted out, they have the chance to connect. They wouldn't be part of LID two. No, absolutely not. Doesn't make any sense.
Then I guess my application was not valid. I've got neighbors on either side of me that have the stuff, but I was invited and signed up for LID two. But what I'm hearing now is I'm geographically ineligible.
No.
You live by
Because-
me, right? You live over by the golf course?
No, you can go for LID two.
Yeah, absolutely.
that no boundary for LID two has been created yet.
Yeah, correct. There's been no formation or subdivision, if you will, of homes decided for an LID two.
Yeah, and there's no connections at all.
We have to go out for
If it's
adjudication.
geographically set up and you can't overlap, then the areas where you've already installed it have to be in a geographical boundary, which would make it ineligible for further LIDs in development.
So, but we have not installed it in our area. Only fiber optic line that's been installed adjacent to the golf course are the main trunk lines that service the wells and the police department.
Got no residential installations in the
Negative.
holiday subdivision.
Absolutely not. If we did, I would want to be one of them.
Yeah. So you think of LID two as you just look at your map and you're a council member and you're hearing from your constituents, and I don't know where LID one is.
Can I
pull it
share my
up?
screen and I can pull it up?
But you're gonna do, you're,
We can't hear you talking, sure.
so,
Hang on a sec, he's gonna show you a map real
Can you let
quick.
me, yeah. I want to.
anyway, the long and short of it is LID two is not the concept of adding more customers to LID one. LID two is let's create another area and put infrastructure where it doesn't.
So, for the city of Mountain Home, this is our GIS database that tracks, this screen tracks fiber. This north part of town that's highlighted in blue is LID one. Anything that's not highlighted is new development. As we go to the south, you'll see main trunk lines. These were the initial installation that were not part of the LID. As you go to the south, you'll see the last portion of LID number one highlighted here. Everything else that's here, everything else that's above it to the north is all new construction installation. You go to the holiday subdivision.
New construction or tied to
Yes.
Public Works
Public
and
Works.
supporting SCADA.
Right, because the fiber optic network supports all of the SCADA, which monitors our wastewater systems and our water systems throughout the city, so that we know what's going on with our wells. So I don't know where you live exactly.
Oh, I can see it from here.
Yeah, well, I live in this exact same little bubble. The only fiber optic lines that run in this portion of the city support the well at the golf course. They support the golf course. They support the police department, and then they go up and they service the rest of our systems. So this is wells. This is a well. This is a tank. This is a well. So there is nothing in the holiday subdivision. There is nobody connected to the city of Mountain Home fiber optics in this area.
So when the boundaries for LID one, I'm trying to get a reference here, is all I'm looking for. When we determine, how were the boundaries for LID one determined?
Those are based on the amount of opt-ins we had in specific neighborhoods. We knew that if we wanted to keep it affordable, we needed at least a 50%. So that's how that was determined.
We took in entire subdivisions,
Right.
which if you see on 6th Street, Chris pulls a map up, Lockman subdivision is a messy subdivision because they took in multiple easement boundaries and old alleyways. So that's why we came down 6 slightly, is because Lockman subdivision's boundaries changed in the 70s.
Yeah. Ugly.
Or we wouldn't have made that further drop onto 6. That makes sense. And then it tied in a few others along the 6th Street side, but didn't grab any others heading north of 6.
Another question then for Jeff. Bear with me, my mind gets muddled around these things.
That's okay. That's my job. Mine does too.
When the city puts out an open announcement, if you're interested, sign up. Can that be considered a citizen's petition?
No, there's a method by that has there's a petition method in there.
Okay.
And as long as they follow that, then it's a petition. I'm less clear on whether or not you're bound after that because, again, I've had to learn this one, but they're not that hard. So you'll probably get a clearer indication of the take rate and the mandate from your constituents via petition, or you can start it and then hear what the protests are. Because again, this thing is loaded with notices and opportunities for people to say, hey, no. It's loaded with requirement that the city make sure that they proportionally allocate the cost to the benefit. So most of the case law is on cities doing improvements for business districts or local districts, and then whether they calculated the share right on stormwater improvements or street improvements. That's where the case law has been like, my property's this many acres, you didn't do it. That's what's typically litigated, which is not likely to happen. So I have one.
Can we stop sharing or?
No, that's helpful. Actually, if you would leave that up for a minute.
Absolutely.
I went through some of this correspondence, and I hopefully caught most of the legal questions, but there was one that caused a red flag because we know the requirement for things to be enterprise funds. And so there was a comment in one piece of correspondence regarding water and wastewater's involvement in the project or their expenditures. And I think what you can see here, and I was going to defer to Mr. Curtis, but you can see that a large part of the fiber development in the city was done just directly for the benefit of city departments at the cost of the city departments to serve their functions. So in other words, in order to have instantaneous internet feedback between the city's SCADA system, wells, and its tanks, the city chose, and the city water department chose, to bury fiber optic lines, also communicating with the police department. I think the sheriff's office. Is the sheriff's office in on that? Anyway. So you can see that there's a colorable legal argument that some expenses that were taken out of water and wastewater regarding the fiber optic system without confusing LIDs and Title X functions were simply done for a water and wastewater purpose. So the way that the city has forever broken out people's salaries and allocated it among the functions that they cover, water and wastewater for people out front. So salary comes, some of it comes out of water, some of it comes out of wastewater, some of it comes out of streets. I believe, and I don't know the numbers, right? So I'm not talking eaches and aughts, but there was a comment in one of these emails sent to the city that the water and wastewater is expenditure of funds, and that's for your purview. Just realize that there is a straight-faced argument to be made that those things were done independently of the whole fiber optic backbone. And so it would be proper to allocate some of those costs, if not all of them, depending on when the stuff was laid. And I'll let the experts or the finance folks speak to that.
I want to hear more on that and more clarification. Yes.
Yeah, so they can get into those details, but the legal concept is it's appropriate for them to spend that money because of the purpose that it serves. And I remember the bad old days of that being done through old school internet and dial-up modems and Wi-Fi signals that were capable of being hijacked, that controlled tanks, that controlled wells. It was, I don't know, you guys can speak to that, but.
Radio frequency was also
Yeah.
considered at the time, and
Right. We
came
had
with
the
its own
ability to go
challenges.
online at one point. Remember that thing? I can't remember how old it was, but they gave us a dashboard as councilmen. We could see which wells were pumping and which ones weren't. And I realized, well, if I can look at this, what about our friends in Iran?
Well, that was precisely some work that was done in early 2024 to protect the city against those things.
So anyway, I just offer that as some legal guidance. I don't really have any other. If you have any more legal questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them at this point. But again, what I've seen is a lot of not confusion, maybe just misunderstanding it. And I think none of you were sitting here when this got adopted. Just so you all know, this is Title 10. This governs the system. An LID is just a funding mechanism that's existed wholly separate from this. So, just so you know the difference.
Okay. All right, Chris, you ready for yours?
Yeah, I'm ready if you are.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, I'm going to take off, but if you need me to pop back, you can call me. I don't, unless you want me to stay for this, but I don't see any.
I guess I'll have one question since you're heading out. So the LID has to be, it's on its own, it's separate and everything. I understand that.
Yeah.
Moving forward, if I've found that there are different models out there when it comes to fiber for city,
Yeah.
and specifically a private / partnership with the city, where they're moving forward on that perspective or that way. Does that impact LID number 1 in any way that would have to be incorporated if we went to a different direction when it comes to?
It could. I would think it would be up to negotiation with, if you were going to do a public-private partnership. You have to be careful with those, not lending credit. But there's a way you could reverse engineer that and include it or exclude it. But that's, we can show you the legal framework when I have something more specific. Yeah, it's could be.
All right, just curious since you had brought up about LID needing to be itself and all that.
Yeah.
So.
You were saying the same thing I was. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm going to let Bruce speak on Eagle's
Okay.
behalf, or not behalf, but Bruce can speak on that exactly. Because we did look at that in the very inception of this whole public-private partnership, and one ISP told me to pretty much pound sand. The other one said, "Hey, we can help you out, but you can own some. We want to own some," but then they would end up owning all of it. And then, but I'm going to let Bruce talk about on it. Sorry, bud.
No problem. So public-private partnership you have to define, because something as simple as Google Fiber, where the city offers expedited permitting and favorable terms to enter the right-of-way, can be considered a public-private partnership. Then there are public-private partnerships like the City of Mountain Home Run. Strictly speaking, the city provides no retail service. So that it's all provided by private partners. So it is technically a public-private partnership in its operation. Then there are public-private partnerships where the city subsidizes, meaning that it gives money to a retail service provider to build the infrastructure, and that private company owns that infrastructure and therefore has a virtual monopoly that the city is subsidizing. And those are also called public-private partnerships. The challenge that you're going to have, and your city attorneys pointed this out, the infrastructure you currently have that goes to the home was paid for by those residents. So the question of whether or not you can transfer any ownership of that asset to a private company has some complications. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm not saying you can or you can't do it, but clearly there's some political considerations for the city council as well. So my point would be that, could you do a public-private partnership? Yes. You in fact kind of have one at this point, but you're funding infrastructure, not service. So you just need to go into it very carefully and very logically, because if you ask somebody else to fund, build, and own the infrastructure, you're going to have two separate infrastructure owners. And the question will become, what happens when the people on the private system pay a different rate from the people on the public system? So those are things that you're going to have to wrestle with.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna flee and work on our intergovernmental agreement, so,
All right, thanks, Jeff.
for
All
our
right.
other favorite topics.
All right, Christopher, you're up.
All right, it's not gonna be me doing most of the talking, but we took the questions that were presented by both Councilman McCarthy and Councilwoman Workla, and we just did a pretty basic, because I'm a pretty basic guy, PowerPoint presentation to answer the questions to the best of our ability. So the first question that Councilman McCarthy asked was all under financial stuff. The question was final project cost compared to the estimated cost. So before we started the LID, and I wasn't here when we started it, but we went out and we got a couple of quotes from a couple of utilities that do install and build fiber optic networks. One of them was Crown Utilities, the other one was Sawtooth Utilities. As you can see on the screen, Crown was 2.7 million to install the system, and the system was LID 1. It was the LID that we built. And then Sawtooth was 2 million. Our final cost for our construction was just a little over $1 million. So that was what the driving factor was, and we based that number for the city on the engineer design, the cost of the materials, the cost of the labor to install. So we, at that point in time, determined it was cheaper and better for the citizens to do it ourselves, and we did. We came in half of what the closest next bid was.
Okay,
And those were sealed bids.
And those were sealed bids, absolutely.
so I haven't seen this before, so I just want to clarify, when you say O&M cost versus revenue, that's for the LID, right?
That was the question from Councilman McCarthy.
So I would say, I just, the term O&M I'm using in my brain is the day-to-day stuff versus the
And
LID
we were gonna
cost.
address that.
Okay, good.
That's why there's no O&M number up there. So what we answered for this
Okay.
one is there
All
is
right.
no O&M associated with the LID. The residents paid $32.29.67
Okay,
for their assessment to be part of the LID when it concluded.
okay, so just the word, the O&M up there doesn't mean what I think it means. It's the LID assessment per house and not O&M.
Per house. And
Okay.
yeah, because there is no O&M, and that we were gonna address that.
Okay.
Because the O&M doesn't fall within the LID, it's a separate.
Yeah, there's some clear questions that aren't, they're very misunderstood, and like trying to explain them. So such as, like, the question may say O&M in the LID. There was no O&M in the LID. Therefore, like, we have to explain those along with assessments and then the cost breakdown as we move forward. So
Okay.
we're going to try to clear some of that up. So,
Awesome. Well,
yes.
I'll still duck out, but you need me.
You don't want to stay. I stayed for yours.
All right, hey, let's keep this going. Come on. Go ahead.
Oh,
I will say on those two quotes, if I'm not wrong, that was just for the drilling as well. Like that doesn't count the splicing time or install or anything like. They were just going to put the conduit in, so added quite a bit of cost just to those quotes. So
conduit and the fiber optic cable itself and the splicing and the installation are separate, and this was just for drilling. And then for the O&M, does that answer your question? Yeah, so there is no O&M cost associated. We pulled the labor totals for the city employees, and we pulled the labor totals for the personnel plus employees, because that was your next question. City was 154,000, and then the personnel plus were 320,000. So that was what the labor cost for the city and the.
How many personnel or employees from Personnel Plus?
At the max, we had 6. Is that correct, Danny?
from Personnel Plus, yeah,
Oh, from Personnel Plus?
from Personnel Plus, I think max was at 5.
5,
at
okay.
one time.
At 5 at one
Yeah,
time.
it kind of fluctuated throughout the project. But
Yeah.
And I'm sure they had like a set rate and everything like that, a breakdown of
Mhm.
cost for wages versus, I mean, it's a temp agency, correct?
Right, yeah.
So did they have anything else besides just wages, or was this purely wage numbers, I guess is what I'm
Just a flat fee per head count per hour.
We're invoiced by Personnel Plus on a monthly basis, which follows our payroll. So their payroll does include the workers' compensation,
The insurance.
insurance, whatever state, federal, Personnel Plus pays all that. We just pay the invoice to Personnel Plus.
So
those
if,
are
if we
P3.
paid them $20 an hour, Personnel Plus would probably charge us, I can't remember, $27 an hour.
At least, yeah.
That's what I'm curious about, if there was anything that was over the just wages cost.
No, it was
Whatever the
a,
fees that.
it was a flat fee per head count per hour.
Yeah.
All payroll costs were associated with the billing to Personnel Plus, which would be the exact same cost we would incur on our end if we ran their payroll. Makes sense. Our problem is we can't, Percy distinguishes how long we can keep an employee on. We can only run seasonal employees no more than 8 months. So some of these people worked for us for longer than 8 months. Therefore, we cannot keep them on our system. We have to cut them loose.
Because how Personnel Plus was selected.
We interviewed everybody. The applications came through. We use them as the hire agency. Personnel Plus advertises, and then they send them to us. We interviewed them. We hired them. So, besides the retirement and health insurance benefits that the city employees get, Personnel Plus paid your FICA, state, all the taxes. But those are paid through AP, so those invoices can be pulled if you'd like to look at them further.
Yes, please, thank you.
Good.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Tiff?
Oh, Clearwater. Some differential here. Clearwater Financial was not hired solely for fiber optic. They're a financial advisor citywide. So annually you pay a retainer of $12,000 to them. It's split between the 4 funds that are listed above. That was approved by the city council, and they provide financial guidance on multiple levels. We're currently working on some of the wastewater treatment financing with them to understand where that goes for direction with you guys. That all is included in the 12,000. So I guess in the question by Councilman McCarthy is what was the expense associated with the LED? The fiber optic department paid the 1,800, but we asked even more questions, I guarantee, than just, and their work put in for the LED was more than that value, I would assume. But that is all that was paid to Clearwater out of those funds in the operational year.
We've paid them twice now.
We pay them annually.
Right, so we've done 2 annual payments with them now, correct?
Yeah, you did last year, and then you just renewed a new one, yeah.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean.
How was the breakdown figured? Because when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at water and wastewater is paying 70% of that retainer.
Yes, there was a memo wrote to the city council on the first approval. I can pull that and share it with you, but majority of the debt by the city is solely out of water and wastewater. The admin is because of the law enforcement building is a debt. And then fiber optic, we needed them for the
LED closeout.
financials for the LED and to get the utility off the ground. So that would be why it's broke up that way. But majority of your debt is water and wastewater.
Can you, sorry, Tiffany, just dumb question. Can you expand on that for me a little bit, please?
Your debt, your bonds and financing are water and wastewater.
So that's how it was determined, if
Correct.
looking at the cost of the project, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why more than likely you need a financial advisors to help you negotiate your bonding and your guidance.
DEQ loans, more or less the bonding.
Yeah.
Next slide.
I can provide the memo if needed.
Danny?
Yeah, so the initial plan for the LID was to hopefully take 9, 12 months. It did come out. I think it was 2 years to the day, if I'm being honest. We had a very green crew. It was a lot of on the job training. We didn't have anybody that was really experienced in this, you know, in the construction stuff and the fiber splicing. And yeah, I mean, it took longer than I wanted. So, and then Chris had pulled up that LID map. I don't know if you guys wanted to take a look at that again, because I know that there were questions of boxes and line depths and things.
So if we go back to this LID map, your question was too big to put into slides because you wanted to know the depths, you wanted to know the trunk lines. So Mr. Matthews sitting in the back, here's our GIS expert. Since the before the fiber program came online, John has maintained the maps. Every time we do installations anywhere around the city, whether it's water, sewer, fiber, you name it, John makes sure that all gets entered in here. And when he enters it in, he identifies every single line. A line, you can click on it and it gives you the data that you were asking for. Is it a trunk line? Yes or no? How many fiber strands are in it? And then what's the depth? I know the depth was a big question on a lot of stuff. So you can go through, you can see that this main trunk line that runs down third, it's 42 inches deep. So you can also click on handhold. This is a fiber handhold. You can see the size of the handhold. You can see that this handhold was installed at 36 inches of depth. There's nowhere in here that you're going to find anything closer. The deepest I believe that or the shallowest that we believe we have is
Stone Tree.
Stone Tree. Okay, so
what did that micro?
Stone Tree is right here. Stone Tree. This is not a trunk line. This is a service line, and it's 24 inches in depth. Does that help with that? Does that answer that question?
It gets the info, yeah, to look up.
Okay.
So
And this map, we can make it available. It is not publicly available because it's city infrastructure, but we can make it available. Yes.
Service line is the line from the trunk to the home?
Yes.
And for Mr. Matthews, when you're gauging those depths, and for Danny and John both, we've also included trace line, so your measurement tools will on site measure the actual depth. But it's not just, well, that looks like 2 feet. This is by measurement in surveying equipment that interfaces with GIS. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's a lot of that is done in the initial conduit installation as we're drilling, because it would be incorrect to say that it's 36 inches deep straight, because we have to go under and over utilities and we have to weave around. So we measure those when we do those kind of deviations so that we can identify it. Everything's trace lined, and then we have a piece of equipment that we can actually run down through, and we can stand on top. And for like a sewer line, we can put this, I don't know, what is that called, a duct?
A duct track?
Duct
Yeah,
track,
like
we can
GPS
put it in there
unit.
and it will tell you exactly the depth it is. So that's how we come with all this. John, I call it his wizard staff. And he can go out there with his GIS locator and he can tap all of them based on the trace wire. So
Thank you, guys.
that answer that question for you, Mr. Councilman?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I will go back here. All right.
All right. Performance.
So I want to make sure I didn't miss something. Good. Okay.
So performance metrics, if we had, the system can support a 40 gigabit connection if we had the right equipment on, both sides. Currently, we have several multifamily developments running on a 10 gig connection. Those are some of the apartments that are going up in town. We have over 500 single family homes running on 1 gigabit connection. I have spoken with some of the providers, because I know in Amet, some of the providers will offer like a 250 megabyte service or a 500 megabyte service. I'm still working with them to kind of get that available on our network. If the goal is to just have as many options for people as possible. So light level, so we test for light loss at every install. We make sure that that's within, industry standard. We want that between -5 to -10 dBm. So we do that at every install. Our splicers will tell us on a splice what the estimated loss is. Like, it'll give an illustration basically and show you if you got a good splice, and it'll tell you that exact number. And I wanted to fix this bullet point, but I have had a couple conversations about setting up some software on our network that will send alarms if a specific, home or something like that drops out of that range that we want to see. So we are working on that as well. Project goals. LID 1, we wanted to do 4 neighborhoods, which encompass 719 homes, and our goal was a 50% take rate. Bruce had made a comment earlier that the LID boundaries are also typically based on like feasibility, so like where our service line or trunk lines already are. So that also helped us determine. But I mean, those neighborhoods were by far the highest take rate. So goal 2. We wanted to get that 50% take rate and keep that construction cost at $3,500. So, I mean, we exceeded that. As long as it took, we still came in under budget there. And the goal was to create consistent, reliable, high-speed internet to residents at an affordable cost. I would say another goal is to, like I said, just give people as many options as possible. Zito and Central kind of had Monopoly Mountain Home for a long time. So, and it's great that people can have the option of multiple connections with just one piece of equipment. They can go on and switch those providers in a matter of 2 minutes. So,
Quick question.
Yeah.
Based on those performance metrics, how many times have we gone down for a resident?
For a resident,
Mhm.
Due to there's
The
things
VBG.
the VBG, it can, if there's a power bump, it could get stuck in a boot cycle, and that just typically means we need to come out. We'll provision them a new one and set a new one in the home. That takes about 20 minutes. Cold weather can help or can break that splice as well in the termination case, which that's also we come out 10-minute fix. We just do.
The question is, best guess, how often is that happening?
I would say of the 550 people we have on now, I think it happens once a week. Just from one person.
One person a week.
Yeah.
System-wide outage has only ever occurred once, and that was due to a contractor severing a main line.
I hate it when that happens.
It was rough. It was a late night and an early morning.
Bruce has something to
Go ahead, Bruce.
I think it needs to be understood. It's a very complicated system with numerous partners that operate on it. So, as we frame the question and the answer, we need to be very specific. What outages have you dealt with customers that are city outages, and what issues are ISP or service provider outages, and what outages are related to the customer actually having an issue that they've created themselves? So I think Danny needs to focus on giving you the answer around how many issues he has in a month that are actually a city problem, because I can tell you that I know for a fact Danny gets dispatched and deals with issues that are not city-caused problems. They can be caused by an ISP outage or by residents having trouble with buttons that they've pushed or things that they've done. Danny, is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. We use our management portal kind of as a monitoring system as well. If someone calls and has an issue, we can log into that and see if someone's device is online and connected to the city's network. So a lot of times it will still say it's connected, but they won't have internet. That's typically a router issue or an ISP issue, like Bruce was saying.
So I think the reason I'm pointing this out is because Danny and the city can do a lot of diligence and they can do a lot of work to improve their reliability, but there are numerous things that they can't control that other people control. So I think, just in my experience, just making a general statement, for the size of team you have and their experience level, they do a fantastic job. And I know that because they call us when they can't solve it. And I would argue that when he says one customer a week, at least 3 out of 4 of those is probably not a city problem, but they end up having to engage to help the ISP or help the customer because they're unable to solve it themselves. And so Danny assists with solving the problem, even though it's not necessarily a fiber problem. It's an electronics problem or a service problem.
So when the customers sign in, the modem they use to bring that into their home, they have to purchase. Or is that city Provide-
It's included with their installation.
So issues with that modem become a city issue, does it not?
It depends on the type of issue. What we're finding a lot of times is that they'll want to move it from one place to another and they'll unplug everything and they won't plug it back in right. Those are some of the issues that we do deal with. Now, we have had, like Danny said a little while ago, we've had some that we've had software issues internally and then we just run out, provision a new one, stick it in there and they're good to go. So yes, absolutely city issue, but city issue with outside interference.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
The generation of it notwithstanding,
Sure.
it still requires the technician to go out and fix it.
Yep. Yes.
If I can chime in here again, it's extremely important that city council understand the service terminates on the homeowner's Wi-Fi router. The gateway to the internet actually happens on a piece of electronics the homeowner provides. So the cable that runs between the device the city provides and the device that the homeowner provides is kind of the key component where it ends up that we have to prove the services on that device that the fiber connects to. And then the ISP has a responsibility to help the customer from their Wi-Fi router forward. So again, not to muddy the water, just trying to simply point out there are service tiers and there are things the city can do. And yes, there are problems with the city's electronics or fiber getting broken, but I think that they probably the smaller percentage when compared to a problem with the service, which could be the ISP's path to the internet, or it could be the homeowner's Wi-Fi router. At least in our experience, when we document it, we would say that over 80% of the problems that we see in all the networks we support actually come from the homeowner's Wi-Fi router.
Danny, it might be important to help illustrate to the council the connection from the street to the home, the difference between the VBG and the customer supplied router. Can you paint that picture?
I guess I'm trying to understand.
Like we give them recommendations of a router.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so we provide the connection to the VBG.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, that is strictly
Right.
the homeowner's equipment from that point
Yeah,
forward.
the Wi-Fi router, yeah, is we aren't really under, any obligation to help a customer with their router, but I would say almost every time we try to go out of our way to help someone with their router, not necessarily, something we have to do. It's just, I don't know. Customer service, yeah, that's why I grew up. But yeah, 9 times out of 10, it is somebody, they need to reboot their router because they need to update firmware on it like that. People don't always know that you should be doing that every couple weeks, or like Chris was saying, people want to move their equipment and they think that little yellow cable is just like any other cable. But I mean, you touch your finger on it, it's going to cause significant reflectance, and you're going to have poor internet. So that's going out there clean, testing light bulbs. So.
Question on the project goals. So for getting those, those are some of those benchmarks that I was kind of curious about. And I guess I'm curious about, because I know, Tiffany, thank you for sending that town hall, just as kind of a video of the YouTube. I guess one of the other benchmarks I'm curious about, because I had speed test, number of connections. What about businesses? What businesses have come to Mountain Home, or businesses have signed up specifically for the fiber?
So Tidal Wave Car Wash, they got built after the ordinance was put in place to, for all those new connections. So they're online. The Mountain Home Learning Academy our Adult Learning Academy is online. Tanks, I'm trying to think of everybody right now off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
What's the one you just hooked up down the old
ETC,
Yeah.
Coffee, and that financial advisor that's in there, I forget what they're called, but they're all running on that connection.
It's hooked into Taco Bell. They're just not.
Right. They have a contract with another provider, so they, aren't on our service. Same with Ace. We had, run the install for all that, but they had a contract with another provider.
And with the liquor store.
So it sounds that we're not it's not necessarily an attraction, I guess, or are businesses utilizing this, or is there feedback, about the cost? What, because again, during the town hall, this was kind of touted as the fiber is going to help bring businesses or attractions. So I'm curious.
So every time we have a site visit, we tout it. Tout it almost every time. And they're like, really? It's that inexpensive? Like, yeah. And they're like, wow. So it's just another piece of the full spectrum when we're trying to attract a business.
I also, the gentleman that just bought Stardust Plaza, we just connected them as well. So they're providing a connection to all of those units that are in that. There's other ones I can't think of right now. I
Well,
apologize.
if you want to go commercial too, any of the multi units of the home, like Village,
Falcons Landing.
Falcons Landing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all of those are on a 10 gig connection.
So I appreciate that. It sounds like we're touting it as the business aspect. So I'm kind of curious if we have Ace, Taco Bell, a handful of businesses that aren't taking it because they're going for another provider.
They're contractually bound to other providers.
Yeah, that's the problem, is those corporations are contractually bound outside of the state of Idaho, on home Idaho. Therefore, they have to take the service of Syringa, CenturyLink, Zito, whatever those are, that we can't control. Like I don't know how many times we went with Ace. They were frustrated that they couldn't use this locally, that they had to pay the rate of a third party through their corporate.
Same with liquor store, because that's through the state of Idaho.
So, like, we've worked those angles a little bit too. So, unfortunately, some of it's out of everybody's control.
Like Marathon, we've pitched it to them, but they're contractually, I think currently, they'd like to be on it, but right now they have that contractual agreement with whoever they are, whoever they're with.
Yeah, I don't.
But they're still paying O&M if they're using that trunk line, right? Are they just not on our system?
No,
at all?
They're just not on.
they're distinctly separate systems.
Okay.
The other important thing to consider in that is new commercial development falls under Title 10 and the requirement that the contractor and developer bring the infrastructure in for that building, but it does not obligate them to take the service. So new building X for business selling widgets appears on Airbase Road. The developer will be required by our code to put in the infrastructure to service that building should the occupant choose to take it. They're obligated to put the conduit, the boxing, collaring, all the stuff in for that. The occupant chooses at the time that they come in to hook up for water and wastewater service. If they choose to take fiber, they can be scheduled for the install on that. So an important tie there is we're also not growing a whole lot of new business sprout up. A lot of the existing businesses are not within current reach. It's not feasible outside of an LID. There's a lot of feedback in relation to that. Say for the downtown corridor, like you could consider that a concentrated business focused LID2 could be possible in that sense. The feasibility remains to be determined. If you had, say, the target at a 50% take rate, would 50% of business in downtown, if you were to take that corridor, for instance, those are not new construction buildings. This would be applying the logic of an LID across the downtown commerce rather than residential.
I'm going to be kind of curious to see what happens when we have to go to Meadows and anything on Airbase Road, who all jumps on, because right now it's kind of cost conducive for any of the businesses on that left-hand side if you're going out that direction. But as soon as they get to Meadows, then you'll see, I want to see how many people jump on from those businesses. Or like you take ICCU contractual, Desert, the new Desert Sage contractual. So we have to probably the Dutch Bros probably contractual.
I guess that's kind of what I'm curious is that we're not seeing the growth in commercial and everyone's contractual, is this more of a residential project versus business aspect?
I think the
As I
other,
was touted at the beginning.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think the other thing to consider is our initiative at first was residential to make sure that people were able to take the service at an affordable rate and control that service, right, and that rate. But along the way, we're able to do commercial as well. But commercial oftentimes isn't right on our trunk line or close to it, or they have to pay that footage difference. And that becomes a little spendy. Yeah, I will tell you right now, Auto Ranch would like to hop on, but he wasn't right next to it. And he had to pay that bill. Well, he'll wait until someone else comes a little closer and he gets a little closer, right? Like that's build it and they will come. That's what this is.
Right.
I do know that there are businesses waiting for that to get close. Standard being one of them on Airbase. I've gotten several calls from multiple businesses that do want to get hooked up, but it's about getting closer. So
That's what I'm trying to figure, because like I have the GIS up here. It looks like we have a trunk line that goes in front of Auto Ranch. So is it a cost issue, or is it truly an access where it's actually closed? You know what I mean? That's
I'll tell you, we have a bit up there somewhere, right? That's a lot of rock up in that area. And it was tough to get to tidal wave. So, and in fairness, council, we were trying to close an LID on a restricted budget, coming in under to make sure it was affordable for the people. And so us knocking on doors for businesses wasn't an initiative we were doing. We were trying to close an LID and get homes hooked up. And so if businesses came along, we provided them a service along the way if we could. But other than that, they weren't our central focus. With all due respect to the businesses, but that wasn't our mindset.
into their parking lot.
Yeah, plus
Because
you're
I'm
looking at,
over 100 feet.
you're looking more like 150 yards to get close to them.
So again, that's where I bring up, is it trunks there? Is it more of a cost?
There's also comes the factor, as Tiff mentions, the personnel bandwidth of what personnel we have on staff. During the LID, Personnel Plus was strictly working on the LID. And so at the time, Danny and Kyle, while he was still with us, were the only two staff members on the City of Mountain Home staff that could go drill, service those non-LID locations that fall under Title 10 in either new build or those businesses or residential that desire to get on the system outside of an LID. So there's a bottleneck that exists in just the manner of we don't have enough personnel at times to do those things. And that's important to consider and what the capability is for those service points.
And I think that's a great point, and I think this is why I was hoping for this after project review, because again, if you're limited on staff, and we were originally hoping to do the LID in 9 months, but we pushed it, almost 2 years. To me, I'm running in my mind of, did that run into any cost overruns? Did it run into timelines? All these things. Usually when you see a project, when it's bid out and with the bids of what it's going to cost and it has that timeline, that cost is based on that timeline. Obviously, we've discussed certain projects here, but that's kind of where I'm coming of, on this after project review is, when I see that we're double over the timeline that we originally thought, is the cost still there? Usually, and this isn't to you, Danny, sorry, this is just a general. That's where I'm kind of curious about the cost of LID number 1 and how that was all broken out and trying to figure out. Because again, if we were splitting our time and everything of that nature, usually again, you see projects, sorry, Tiffany, you see projects that usually have over timelines, cost overruns, all these things. So I guess that's kind of where I'm curious with that.
I mean, the number on, I think, the previous slide where the total project cost being just over It might have been one or so back. Sorry, Chris.
You're good.
All right, there. Final cost at 1.03 million and change. There's no cost overrun there because the initial CARES Act deposit that was the seed funding for LID 1 was already set at 1.566. And so working within the confines in LID 1, that is the total possible initial expenditure that could have been done and came in under budget. Yes, the project duration lasts longer, but there's no cost overrun because it came in under what the actual equivalent of cash in hand from ARPA funding that was allocated to that was expended. So
How is that monitored when it comes to LID hookups versus non-LID hookups? So that we know we weren't blending, so to speak.
there was specific budget lines that were accounted for there. There was a burn down chart that per the CARES Act that had to be maintained by our grant administrator. Each one of those expenditures was separated out between what the fiber backbone and needs of water and wastewater over here, the potential of non-LID new fiber hookups in, say, new construction, and then in the third bucket, LID specific expenditures. And that number is the LID specific project cost.
It maybe Danny could give a better explanation. At the beginning of the morning, they know, hey, you and Kyle, hey, we got to go do a new connect. You 6, you're out here, you're putting all this stuff in, or you guys would divide that up, right? But you'd always list it out. Hey, in your payroll, this is LID, this is new connect.
Yeah, a lot of times in the comments in Cassell, it would be this many hours to new development, this many hours to LID. And more often than not, it was only really my time that was split because we would keep, at least one city staff with the Personnel Plus guys.
I like the term blending. So currently there is no funds that are blending in with LID 1. So if you paid for LID 1, you're solely funding that district. Is that correct? So I just want to make it clear for the citizens out there because we get these questions asked. Am I paying anything, even a penny, towards LID 1 if I did not opt into LID 1? They're not blending through any enterprise funds, water, wastewater, which we get through our emails. Okay.
And just for the council members, I just want to give you a bit of personal experience with this. I was asked by a former council member, here probably a year and a half ago, to come in and sit down with her and members of the city administration and go over some billing. And that involved some of the city staff having their time split on the LID from out of the Public Works Division. What was happening was, and it was you had to kind of piece it together and look at it holistically, because what was occurring was simply a matrix type setup where the hours were being billed and paid for out of one department and then back billed to the LID. So what you would see is the personnel cost going out under the department, and then you look back into the transaction, that cost was transferred to the LID. The LID reimbursed the department for that employee's time. So the department did not actually pay for that LID work. The LID bucket did.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next slide.
Sorry, before I leave, because now you're at a pause. On that note, I had a question for this. The timing and why we may have been off 9 months is we then had new connections and home growth grew. So you had new construction. You were in the middle of an LID that we were very ambitious that we would get done in 9 months.
Right.
Because that's what we thought we had to do to keep construction low. Under our allocated funds that the city council had given us. Budget business. So you have multiple, in a sense, projects happening all at one time, and 9 months probably wasn't realistic, if that makes sense.
So essentially, this was all tracked as just like Railroad Park is being tracked with Is there documents out there for?
There would be some, yes, there would be tracking through Grant, through Alexa, and then their timesheet.
Walking out
Is on the next slide. Yeah, give me a sec. It's
Okay.
on that slide.
on. Okay.
So, waiting for the next slide, I'll ask the general group. So it looks like we had grant funding that was used to defray the cost of putting the trunk line in, and the LID then was set up with a specific amount of funding that probably came from the same grant sources to start doing the LID. Then we bonded. What did we bond for after we closed the LID? Did we bond for the cost that we'd already incurred? It was actually funded through grants, or did we bond for the cost anticipated to have monies available for an LID 2?
Mayor, isn't it? Because I asked this question too when I first got elected, and your answer, Mayor, was that my question was, what if majority of people decide to pay the $3,228 upfront cost or connection cost over a period of time? What is it? 10 years that they were? Yeah, exactly. Thank you. How will we financially secure that, right? And then you said that's through the bond. The bond will cover that.
So right now we have, see, there goes Tiff.
This is
I
what
know,
this
I'm sorry, it
slide-
was a bit of a set. I wasn't trying to, but she was,
Yeah,
we had a
no,
pause.
that's all good. So what we ended up doing, we had, I don't know how many people, is that, I can't see, it's too
That's
small.
that's what basically what this is going to answer to. So the total project cost came in at 1.198 million. Number of houses in LID 1 was 371. We had the prepaid assessment was that 3229.67. We had a total income from that prepayment was 358,493.37.
Time out.
Okay, there's Chip. Time out.
Time out.
Time out. No.
Yeah, Councilman Sanders and Councilwoman just asked these very questions that,
No,
What?
okay.
you're very needed.
So-
What are the questions?
I'm looking at your financial summary, and Cliff was doing his best to get started on it, because my question was, and I'll go back and go over it again. So correct my understanding if it's not right. There was a series of funds made available to the city that actually wound up paying the costs of the trunk line installation and the LID 1 installations up until such time as we had a final assessment and we went to close it out. We closed out by getting bonds to zero balance the LID number 1. If we had grant funds that paid for our costs leading up to the assessment and we zero summed it out, why did we need to have a bond? And if so, now that we have that bond, is that money now sitting there to be used for an LID 2?
So it's more than one answer.
I want them all.
So you were given ARPA money that was, well, the city was given ARPA money that was allocated into the fiber optic fund to be used as the financing mechanism to, let me know if Bruce is willing to help. So those funds were allocated as the financing mechanism to LID 1. So upfront costing the construction, if you will,
For LID 1.
for LID 1.
None of the fiber.
No, the trunk.
The trunk or.
The trunk was all paid for to get
But
to wells
prior.
and wastewater.
So again, a separate project, separate grant funding.
Okay.
The trunk lines, multiple, we may have connected along the way, but that was prior to this project,
No,
prior to ARPA.
And I get that. I guess I'm curious. I just want to clarify so the ARPA went to LID number 1.
Correct.
What did we use to pay for the fiber, the city fibering, the trunk, everything going to wells and all that?
We used water, wastewater to get to all the wells and to wastewater.
There was no grants associated with
So there was
that.
no
Well,
grants.
There was a couple broadband grants
Oh,
that
we
went
got-
to
no, we
parks
had-
and
right.
that, yes.
Councilman Sanders, right, we did have a broadband grant from the state of
State,
Idaho
yep.
for, I think it was like 500 and some thousand. And that got from the fiber hut to the booster station. And then, because we put that in there and got that to parks. We wanted to get it to some parks so the children at the time could get Wi-Fi.
And some of that money was again associated due to COVID
Mhm.
and education-based and free public Wi-Fi.
And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get off here.
No,
I
you're
just
good.
want this to be clear, and so that I'm tracking, that the ARPA funds went to LID, which I understand. I guess what I'm trying to get to eventually here was one of my questions is, where did the money come from for the trunk lines, the wells? And it sounds like that came out of $500,000 grant, but was there also more? Was there another cost to, was there the balance of that, whatever the expense was, where did that come from?
So, respectfully, council, there's so many multiple facets of this project from the very get-go in coming out the gate in 2016, 17, right? So some of these questions are why I ask for questions ahead of time, because off this fly isn't fair, and we need time as staff to find them. So, like, I'm telling you, but I can't guarantee it's 500,000. I wasn't the clerk at the time. I was sitting in recreation. So give me some time and I'll follow back up and provide that. And if we have to open the door again and do this, I'm game. But so some of those were they were early on COVID money that did trunk line. Your water, wastewater funds funded those necessities. And then city departments paid back. So like recreation had terrible downtimes because we had a point-to-point system at that time. So Parks and Recreation, to get their connection to internet where we could take a phone call and help a customer, these guys came in and drilled it. And then the Parks and Rec department paid that expense back to water and wastewater because that's what was funding them in their work to get wells connected. If that makes sense.
Same with the fire department, police department, city hall. Every department paid water and wastewater back if they wanted to be on that trunk line.
Which is also the thing to come with the library in a few short months here. Library is contractually bound to the service that they have now. They desire city fiber. They've budgeted for city fiber. They will pay water and wastewater,
They'll pay
or they'll pay the fiber cost, not water and wastewater, the fiber cost.
It is really meant to be a 50,000-foot question.
No, I just mean like when it's
No.
getting more into the nitty gritty.
That's what I didn't mean,
firing, but
nitty gritty of like how much came from this department, this. It's just the mechanism of what
For sure.
paid for that
Yeah.
trunk and
But
that.
again, there were multiple facets of a pot's kind of going, right? And so to give you the correct answer, which I want,
But the bottom line is, we had a pot of money,
we did.
whether that came from grants or other sources. We started out with funds for LID 1,
Correct.
and we expended those funds to put LID 1 in place.
Yes.
And then we went to the people and said, the cost of this is X, the assessment's going to be Y, you now have to pay us Z.
Yep.
And that is to cover the costs we incurred,
Correct.
where the source of those funds came from here. So why did we bond if we had a zero net sum at the end of the day because we weren't really those grant dollars?
The intention was to roll those next funds to another district to give affordable fiber optic utility to the citizens of Mountain Home, rather than just 700 homes with the potential and 300 hook up. Those 300 pay back, and we use that seed money, if you're gonna say, and put it to the next. And we're just gonna keep rolling. So hopefully everybody has an opportunity in Mountain Home to have fiber optic utility
Okay.
at the front of their home.
This is
Tiffany, can I chime in here?
Jump, Bruce.
So the sole purpose of the LID is the property owners have the debt. The lien is against their property if they don't pay for it up front, not the city. So the whole objective of using the LID is to not use the city's funding. The city becomes something of an enabler. In other words, they come up with a process where they can opt in or opt out, but the debt does not actually show on the city's books. And Tiffany and your finance can speak to that. The debt actually shows completely separate from the city, how it gets paid and everything the city manages, but the city has zero financial risk associated with the LID once it closes. The city has financial risk to perform the project, to come in on budget, because they've committed to the residents, this is what we're going to do. But upon closing, that debt is no longer on the city's books. And so you wouldn't, if you were going to just build it using grant money, you wouldn't create an LID, you would just build it. And it would be a contribution to those homes that they would never pay back. But as Tiffany points out, you would have 700 homes now with that received it free, and you would be stuck in a position of trying to figure out how to do the rest. So there was a very slim prescriptive way to take a portion of your ARPA dollars to use it for this project, use the LID to pay it back, and then be able to reuse this same money to create another LID and use it as a construction loan, and then do another LID to pay that back to the city. So it can be a rolling fund to do LIDs if you choose to do it. And if you don't, the city still gets that money back and gets to decide how to use it. So think of that money just as a construction loan that goes through the process until it closes.
And one of the biggest things too, council, is we wanted to make interest on that funding. So hopefully, and let's say you keep doing them, and in 10 years, let's say you have the whole city hooked up, or maybe nobody else wants it. Then you're gonna have all that money with all the interest for the next 10 years. And then what do you guys decide to do? What do you want to do with that money? I think that was kind of another big factor, is we're making interest on that money.
That was that 5% or something like that.
We charged a nominal fee. We had to do it a nominal fee when we were during the construction.
Right.
And then the bond fee was like
4.95%.
4.95.
But that's all. So everybody in the LID paid the interest for the beginning of the construction loan, and then when they went out for bond, then we got that 4.9 assessed. So they're still paying on that 4.92 as the interest, unless you paid it all off at the beginning.
So who's liable for the bonds right now?
The homeowners.
The homeowners are.
The property.
Which that's if they didn't pay off, which I understand if they didn't pay off the $3,200 right then and there, then they had the assessment and the lien essentially against.
Correct, which is what the breakdown here becomes. So every home that's in the LED that took the construction, essentially at title has an LED on it.
And who paid Clearwater to go out for that bond? Was it the LED?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All that financial was in. It's all included in their costs. Yes, their shared costs.
Another slide.
So I don't know if we want to break this one down. So Chris told you the construction cost was just slightly $1 million. After you add the interest, the total project shared costs to the district, which I'm gonna say is the LID 1 district, is the 1.198. So there were a total of 371 homes within the district that took the service. The rest of them did not. So you're over the 50%. The assessment at the time of closure was $3,229.67 for the homes. So they had a window of prepayment where you could pay it up front and have no interest on it. And so we had a total of 358,493, which is a total of 111 homes come in prepayment in that window. So that's sitting in city budget now to pay, because the city pays the bond payment essentially, right? So that money's sitting in city budget dollars now. After the prepayment, your bond financing was the 839. So total finance on the bond was the 839. You add the interest rate, remaining balance, then with interest is the 881. Makes sense, tracking me. 25-26 annual customer. So every year your balance accrues 4.95% interest rate for the residents that don't want to pay it in a lump sum amount. So whatever their balance is on the total project cost gets the 495. So these are, I'm going to get into some averages based off my math because how this works. So right now, heading into their first year's balance due, the customer's their total due is $3,389.54. because we've added the 495 to it. They're going to come in, they're going to pay an annual amount. So their annual amount is the box kind of slid over. We're going to go average here. I'm working with Cassell right now because it gets amortized out. And I'm not a financial guru to do amortization, and I wasn't going to do it in Excel. So the average annual payment to a customer in the district is about $355.73.
Per year, that's what they're.
Yeah, so they're gonna pay in between 320 and 350 as the interest and the bond principal, as the principal of the bond decreases, and you have enough in reserve, then your payment lowers to your bond over time. And so that bond money comes back in to help lower payment costs as we spread out into that 8 to 10 year range, if that makes sense. And Bruce, who is the subject matter expert, can probably explain that a little better than I can, because this was my first one. But you have ultimately, like, you can see the differential because your bond payment is the 113, which is what you're obligated to pay. Everyone makes their payment. Again, an average you're at 92,000 should come in. If all the homes who still owe balance today make their monthly payment or their annual payment to the city, then you have a shortfall of kind of a 20,000 mark. But that 20,000 has been sitting there in prepayment. You have interest that you're calculating, so then you're collecting on it. So
We'll see that's broken out. Treasury reports, we have the fiber optic fund, which it shows it came the 800, say for round numbers, the 800,000, but now we have an LID guaranteed fund as well of 400,000.
Yep.
Which we have to keep the 400,000 in there, which it shows that we are making some revenue off of the guaranteed fund. But I guess to me, I'm kind of curious now. This isn't for you, Tiffany. I'm thinking out loud here.
good.
If we bonded for, what was the amount we bonded for? The 1.2, right?
8. The total bond amount was the 800,000.
Was the 800? Okay. So if the 800 went back into the fiber optic fund to potentially go to the next LID, where did the 400 that's sitting in LID guarantee fund, and this is probably a question for Paula, where did that 400,000 come from?
Wasn't that prepaid assessments?
Yes. There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Prepaid and any annuals paid in the last year. We've been there.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And the neat thing about the prepaid that's sitting there collecting interest.
Well, and I'll be honest, we've had, I think in February, I released 8 homes that have either sold that are in district or they've just walked in and paid.
Yeah,
We've
that's
had
the
good
other-
turnout in that.
Yeah.
But
Turnover in homes. Yeah. Those assessments get cleared when that home is sold.
Right. They just roll
Part of the
over
settlement cost.
I like it when we can all work through it.
So
Communication's
I don't know if I'm
important,
going to be jumping too soon, but I want to thank everybody's hard work.
Yeah.
I intentionally didn't ask questions because I didn't want my mind preoccupied with other stuff when I was listening to all the questions I know all the great minds around us would have already offered. But I'm at a point where I am pretty comfortable, so I want to get information for the next big question. Should this council choose to move ahead, what are your projected costs for another district?
I'll go first. I don't. No, the costs would, us, I think, speaking for the group, the cost would be to come in less than what we did before. We've had dialogue, like, how do you go with the 700? Do you go with a large group again, or do you go smaller? Like, we've had those dialogues, right? But I think our goal would to probably not bite off more than we did the first time. But I'll say it, and I said it out loud multiple times. We had to do that big to make sure we got the 50% rate. And that's the goal every time.
So my equity then comes back to, I'm looking at the number of dots for people who have signed up on LID2, and they're not extremely clustered. There's a couple that stand out, but by and large, it's all over the town. So
Yeah.
how are we going to be asked to consider, if at all, when you have a 50% breakthrough threshold and you've got 700 people who have a green dot,
Yeah.
and they're in 5 different neighborhoods that are 50% plus, how are we going to draw the boundary if we decide to go less than every neighborhood that's got at least 50% take?
We actually canvassed as staff in the evening to help build LED one's interest. Like same thing started, right? And we haven't done a lot of canvassing or information booklets since we've closed LED one. So we would probably go back to canvassing and showing the interest if that's the direction the city and you guys want us to go in, right? We still have to go out and talk to a judge if that gets approved by the body or the mayor
Judge.
does, right? And so then that, whether the judge allows us to or not, also is the staff time spent to do it.
That was my question. So I have it written down here. Have any boundaries been identified as 50% or more for the take-in rate currently? Have you found any?
No.
Okay. And so thank you, because that I wanted to make sure if that's been identified or not. So it will take you, say, staff time and cost to go out and canvas, knock on doors, advertise.
It'll be staff time. Like, you know what I mean? Like us as staff go out. Department heads, and I think Danny went the last time and knocked on doors. So as far as overtime rate or staff time, that's most of your exempt staff employees are doing that. So that's not a burden to you.
And the reason, and here's I think the biggest reason why we don't have a lot more green dots is because this one took so long, and then people are like, we didn't know the cost. Now that we have shown the citizens, okay, we had a gentleman come in and say, oh my gosh, I held $9,000 because anytime the government gets involved in something, you can almost triple it. He said, I was ecstatic that I only paid 32. He expected 35 or 9,000, or I think what his thing was. But I think here moving forward, people know that it's a bit, well, if the council says, go ahead and move forward, and remember, before I get going, everything will get assessed to the LID too. So any cost that is incurred, it has to go into the judge. That gets assessed to the LID too. But then second, third effects is if we tell people today, hey, we're opening up this map, you better pop your dot on there, and whoever has the highest take rate, I think that's how we kind of quintessentially started that whole process. And then if we had a neighborhood that was right at the cusp, that's when we went and canvassed, like that Stormy Mountain, War Eagle, Bel Air.
And to do that logically, though, we as a body making the decisions in the early stages to proceed with an LID2 have to instill enough confidence, not in just our staff to invest the time to go canvas, but also to instill the confidence in with the potential customer of a residential or commercial interest that we're intending to move forward with LID2, and then we put our best foot forward. We introduce marketing opportunities and so on. Danny walked every single street that they serviced in LID1. Hey, we're going to be there, in the coming weeks. Like you're not signed up now. If you have an interest, now is a great time to get in while the LID is still happening. And I mean, you snagged a solid handful.
We didn't get a huge jump in opt-in forms until council had said, okay, we can move forward with this. Up until that point, it was just another project that the city may do. I think once people realized that we were through with it, that's when we saw a lot.
Mr. Mayor, judicial confirmation, is that on the process of doing it? Does it include the numbers associated with it?
Yeah. Hey, Bruce, you want to answer that one? Judicial confirmation stuff? Because we have to tell them roughly.
Yeah, that's more of a legal question, and I think it was more significant for your first one, Mayor. I think that it's going to come down to you framing it and saying, I don't know that you have to call out the addresses. I mean, even when you did it, you didn't necessarily say, hey, we're doing it here. You said, we're going to do around 700 homes and we expect 50% of them to take it. And I think you can go in with a similar request and say, we want to do the next LID. We believe it's about this side, and we're only going to move forward if we get this percentage of people that sign up for it. And I think the other thing so that would be step one. Judicial confirmation needs to be step one. And I would look at how much funding you have to do the project. The second thing I would look at as you decide what size it is what's the interest rate at various sizes. So Tiffany and your financial advisor can come back and tell you, while you could do a smaller project quicker, your interest rate is going to be higher on borrowing lower amounts. So, that $1 million is kind of a sweet spot for being able to get a reasonable interest rate, but that's something you want to be aware of. And then finally, I would say 100% what Danny said. We found it in Ann, we found it everywhere we go. Until the project is real, you can get about 30% of the people to sign up in the neighborhoods if you do a lot of really good marketing and promotion and say, hey, the city's going to go, we have this project. But until you create the geographic boundaries and you actually give them an LID form to sign up, it feels very nebulous to the resident. And they view the city as not committed to it until the project is created. Once the project's created and they can sign an opt-in form and actually go forward, what we have seen, like in Ammon, multiple times, if you can get 30 to 35% in a neighborhood and you create the project, you can pretty much get another 15 to 20% to sign up after the project is created. That's kind of a general rule of thumb.
And I will say this, if this council so chooses to move forward with another LID, I would ask the judge to make it one of the things where you don't have to come back and ask. Reason being is because every time I have to go to the judge, it could be anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 that the LID people have to pay back. And if I could save that $15,000 to $30,000, not having to come back. The reason why I think she did it the first time because Amanda did it, but it wasn't readily widespread in our neck of the woods, and so she was very cautious. I think is what her. If memory serves me correct, she's very cautious on those LIDs. She says, well, I want you to come back and ask again if you.
Well, and I want to make it clear, it is easily accessible to fill out the form. It's online. You can pull it up. Anyone can fill it out. So that's not the problem, I would say, is not having access to sign up. I think maybe it could be a communication thing, right? Like, I don't know if, I have citizens coming to us saying, why are we putting a stop to it? But again, if my question got answered that we don't have a 50% take rate in a certain area, then why should we go out for adjudication, right? So I see both sides. So if the citizens really want it, could they canvass the area, right? So that's an idea as well.
That exists in a concept early on. They were called fiber champions.
Sure.
Where you were wanting to adopt, you would have a sign in your yard, and talk to your neighbors and do those things as a citizen.
Yeah. So I'm just pointing out, like.
Absolutely, Councilwoman. I see where you're at. I think also, just alone this workshop today, the complexity of a local improvement district, and to be honest, they're putting a debt on their most valuable, other than children, their most important asset, right? And so that is hesitancy to, I think, people of our community. And to be honest, as staff, I learned the whole process along the way. I'm not an expert at it by all means, but I've read a lot of state code and I know how it works. So I think if you did workshops or could open it up for us as staff to help the people understand, to help bring that take rate up, because that uncertainty exists. I talk to people all the time, like, I would do it, but I don't want to lose my home. You're going to take my home. No, we're not going to take your home. This is how it could work, right? And so I think explaining that.
It was the unknown of the cost.
And the unknown, yeah. Like, you're going to say 35, but it could be. But again, that was printed, and if you read all the ordinances or the resolutions, there's a range. You have to stay within that range. And the minute we monitored that on a monthly basis as staff, if we exceeded that range, we had to come back before the body and stop all work. That's how defined it is, right? And so educating that, and us as staff, we're a little bit more efficient. We have more knowledge in it, and I think we can share that with the public. So
I appreciate that, Tiffany. I know for me that'll be another topic for later tonight. It's that the public buy-in.
Yeah.
And the input, I think, is huge. And I'm sure Bruce can kind of speak to that about, with Ammon and that and how they went about. And I will also second Councilman Sanders, excuse me. Thank you for getting this information, and I know there's a lot. And I think it's a lot to digest and go through and try and pick up. And this isn't for you, Tiffany, so I don't want you.
You're fine.
I am concerned about the fiber budget. And I'm seeing the treasury report of the revenue coming in versus the expenditures. Since we got the 800,000 round number since August of last year, based off of the treasury reports, I'm seeing revenue that is somewhat significantly under the expenditures. So if this is something that, we need to do another workshop on and everything so that the public can understand, I'm all for it. This is something that I still have a very cautious red flag with, is figuring out what's our revenue and why are expenditures constantly being over the top. I get before August because that was part of the LID construction, but since we have LID number 1 closed, right now I'm consistently seeing month after month, 22,000 for revenue in September to 41,000.
What he showed.
It's new construction.
Yeah.
So it's new construction versus your
I don't think
operate.
that one had the revenue for the
O&M.
So the new construction is showing in the red, is what you're saying?
That's from the fiber department's budget line. That's the fiber department from the treasury reports, because there's the guaranteed LID one, and then we have the fiber department.
And Chris, you have my questions right up there too.
We're getting there.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure. I felt like it was closing out. I'm like,
No, we're getting there. Yours are there.
Sorry, for time's sake,
No,
we'll
you're
move
fine.
on, but that is something that I would like to
For
dive
sure.
into and really get into on that.
For sure. And again, complexity, right?
Right.
You have the fiber department's a tricky beast because it's not. You have new construction, which is its pot of money, and you're seeing those revenues. And then you have, and Bruce can talk again. And then you have the LID, as well. So
Yeah. So Paul can look at that. Was the one you had the first time, right? This is that one that he had presented right here. Oh, sorry.
I'll put it up, Paula.
He's
so you
cast,
don't
he's
have
gonna
to-
cast it.
now I don't know how to do this. You're in presenter.
I got a phone call right when I walked in here. I'm like,
Should talk a little bit.
You're
You
off.
need me to do something?
You're off the screen. You have to wait till I bring you back.
Yeah, I'm good. I knew that. I knew what was going on.
It's because I'm sharing, so.
seconds.
You continue like
There you go.
Okay.
and I was out. The mayor had me check this. And so what you have, starting cash, and then you have your revenue, have your expenditure. Then over here you put all of this with error, right? Because what's the difference between the 522 and 60? Actually, you look on your treasurer's report, it'll say change in balance sheet.
Mhm.
So those are bills that are happening. You guys get the treasurer's report this first meeting. Because during the first meeting, we're still running AP, payroll, checks are coming, revenue's coming. So the change in the balance sheet is actually this difference that you said was you. And it's on every
It's on the
department
expenditure.
has all of that. So it goes from general fund, which is O1, all the way down to 50. is fiber. So it's not an error, it's just activity that's happening. But as the city is continuing to do. Make sense?
Yes, but that's all based off of the expenditure reports that we get.
Not
correct?
just AP, it's not just AP, it's payroll, it's journal entries, it's revenue coming in. There's a lot of different cogs that is showing that change. So if you wanted to drill down and say, well, exactly what is it? There is an additional report that's set up that will drill down into each fund, tell you what.
So, yeah, I won't speak for this body, but I will say that I guess when I'm getting an expenditure report and it's supposed to show, I'm getting a treasurer report, you know, where it's not necessarily matching up with the expenditure.
The expenditures will match. The revenue will match. Your change in your balance sheet is what's happening. Background. So you're getting 2 expenditures reports per month.
Yep.
You don't get your treasurer's report until after that.
Right. And so when I've gone through and matched it up, I guess I would like some more detailed reports.
Sure, and if you come in and meet with me, I'll be happy to go through those and show you.
Because I guess I'm curious then, if there's all these changes going on and we can't see these on these expenditure reports and the treasurer reports, to me, I think, I'll just say for me, I'd like to see some more reports.
Yeah, if you come in and meet with me or just email me, I can run you those reports. Okay. But it's not an error, it's a change. So you got your expenses, you got your revenues, and then you got what's happening. You got to still track that because once you got the treasurer's report, everything that was happening still has to carry forward. Like this number should always match the next month. Same thing when you do your.
And that's what I've found. Yep.
Yeah, that number should always carry forward and match.
And I get that. I guess my concern, and again, coming and talking to you more and presenting to the board, and I think or the council, but I think we can sit here and consistently say that we went from $805,000 August, well, we're slowly going down.
This one?
Yes. So we were at 805 and our end cash balance is consistent.
748.
Yep.
Right.
So that's where I'm curious of, I'll say for me, moving to LID number 2, if this body chooses to go that route, I would very much like to dive into the numbers a little more because say, just for argument's sake, we left this completely the way it is. The trend that I'm seeing right now is that fund will eventually run out, potentially.
Yeah, it's dependent. Like, are you selling building permits? If you're not selling building permits, that's part of the income. If you're selling the building permits, are actually getting connected to the fiber? That's also like a user. And then you want to also kind of keep in mind in your lab, that if your user fee isn't consistently paying for the cost to operate the fiber, just like water, wastewater, then you're going to want to say, hey, we need to look at that user fee and increase it. So you want to take all that into consideration as you move forward. Any fund.
Thank you, Paula. And that's kind of where I'm looking at is the operation and maintenance. Is that keeping up with that? All those things, because again, just going off of this without getting into the nitty gritty, I don't want to see, to me, this seems like we have to do LID number 2 because then it just has to keep rolling in to keep it up, where eventually if we don't, the funding won't be there. That goes back to operations, maintenance. You know, I don't want to see a fiber project go for 10 years, 20 years, and we have maintenance issues, but we have no funding.
I would like to say there's 3 different options. You got to figure out what your 3 options are and then which one just.
Well, that is very dependent on volumetric load. If you don't have enough service points that are entering in the revenue for O&M, and you've scaled in such a way the pattern that you're holding back the opportunity for the growth that would bring the O&M to match the growth, then you kind of pigeonholed yourself as a project.
Keep that in mind for later today.
So the question, and Bruce brought up, is the capital. So like we're buying VBGs for new connection and new home construction coming. And Bruce, jump in if I'm gonna, or Danny. And so you're seeing that expenditure go out, and maybe we haven't collected the building permit fund yet in on a new construction, right? So you're kind of having that balance, I guess, between awaiting, like you're making the capital investment now, and then the payment will come in 60 or 90 days potentially when the building permit builds out. Like Thunderbolt right now,
I mean, there's 3 brand new neighborhoods coming online right now. So there have been expenditures that needed to be made so that we were ready for those developments. CVH no longer has, from what I understand, a contract with Quantum Fiber. So their equipment won't be installed automatically in all those homes. So phase 3 and 4 of Thunderbolt Landing, Blue Yonder, we plan to get 90% of those homes. We're making sure that our infrastructure is ready in those areas so that when people move in, we can install next day. So it is making sure that we have those, materials on hand.
So I think right now the diagnosis is for me, is like I started at the 805, where am I at? So you're trying to reason out, are we gonna have enough connect? You may not have a lot as cash carryover. You want to make sure that you're at breaking even. That is,
That's where I'd like to get into those numbers. And we have expenditure report, we get revenue report. All this till we see the building.
I agree with that, with the caveat that you could have an expenditure but haven't had the building permit on the build out, right? So you gotta see that.
And a lot of that will be reflected in the change in balance sheet.
But if I can, I'll interject one comment. Ammon faced a pretty significant challenge with new development, having a similar policy for the developer to accomplish a certain amount of work, but the city had some cost associated with getting the lines in there as well. So even though the developer provides the path and provides a certain amount of the background work, there's still cost to the city. So one of the things that we started to do on an annual basis, it was only annually, was just create a record of how many lots were out there that would collect a fiber connect fee when the time came, so that we understood what the potential revenue to offset those costs were that would come back in. So there are a couple of things that might be helpful to you. But I think you're touching on a key thing here. You recognize the scale of what you have affects the cost to operate. You need more customers. And I think that your intention and your commitment when this was started was to serve the residents. So, I mean, this again is a decision that city council needs to make, but your operational cost per subscriber will go down as you grow in scale. And it looks much better at 2,000 subscribers than it's going to look at anything less than 1,000. Less than 1,000 subscribers is hard to continue to support and operate. Getting to 2,000, the numbers look a lot better.
Bruce, this is Councilwoman Workala. I have a question. So you say there is cost to the city. Will that cost to the city then come back to the department once that gets paid out?
Yeah, just like a water connect fee or a sewer connect fee, that's revenue that comes in, but it comes in at the time of permit. And one of the key differences is, and Danny and Rich would have to speak to this, or somebody that's a little more familiar, but I know back when we did some work to calculate what that connect fee was, we actually knew there was some cost to the city, meaning the developer wasn't going to provide everything. So there's some costs of connection, drop cable, some other things, and some lines down the street. Now, Danny, I don't know how much of that work the city's doing and how much the developer's doing. So I don't know if that's changed or if you're still doing a lot of that work, but you would be able to speak to, is there cost to the city that doesn't get recovered? In other words, you don't get it back till a building permit is issued and they pay the fiber connect fee, because there is a fiber connect fee they pay the city to cover those costs.
We are having to come in. The developer just puts in the trunk conduit and the service line conduit up to the home. We do still have to come in and set the boxes in, push the fiber in, splice enclosures, things like that.
So there is a cost to the city that doesn't get recuperate. Sorry, say the word.
Well, I think that's the purpose of the fiber fee and the building permit, is for us to recuperate that.
Yes.
So as they say, like, we might incur the cost at the beginning, but once that building permit fee gets paid, then we allocate that fund back to it.
So Yeah, so the thing I would point out to you is you need to account for that. If you have a lot of growth, you need to account for that in some kind of budget. And that was Ammon's problem. At 400 homes a year, that was a lot of money. And it's essentially you recover it and you know you're going to recover it, but you don't know exactly when because you don't know when they're going to pull the building permit. So it is an asset the city owns and it is an asset that has value, but you don't know exactly when you're going to recover that amount until they pull the building permit.
Raise that fiber fee just recently, right? So I mean, those line items.
All right. Was that the last slide, Chris?
Oh, no.
We're like
Oh, we
halfway.
got more?
You got a lot more.
The clock is sure approaching.
I know, not trying to in any way influence my fellow council members, but I do know lunch has arrived.
Okay, give us. Let's see what you got, Chris, really quick.
So,
Oh, I'll get you
We're
on.
not
Hang on.
sharing, Chris.
There you go. It's coming.
We got Bruce back.
It should be coming up.
it says it's sharing.
You don't have it up on your
I
laptop?
got kicked out.
There you go.
There we go.
Oh, all right, Danny.
Councilman McCarthy, so you had some questions regarding positive aspects and challenges encountered on the project. I would say positive aspects certainly were community excitement, customer satisfaction. That's above everything, is making sure the people that we hook up are happy, and even the yards that we pass through, those people we do the best we can to make sure they're happy as well. It was a significant project to take on with such an inexperienced and small crew. Those other drill crews, they would have brought in, 5 drills and 15 plus guys, and at most we had 7. We were able to create clear expectations and explanations to customers as well as like our own crew on how this process needs to take place. So if we were to go into an LID2, we're in a lot better shape for that. Challenges encountered, which we talked about, the consistent, having a consistent pace because we were spread out. I mean, I was off the project a ton. Over half the time it felt like trying to get new development done, trying to keep up with that because those people aren't, they've already paid essentially. So kind of adjusting expectations of homeowners sometimes too that wanted to get hooked up. They were asking go through their crawl space and bring the fiber up into like a central room and like that. So those were some things that also took time and some challenges, trying to make sure everybody was as happy as possible, but really keeping what we were able to do as streamlined as possible. So running at a high pace, there were utility line hits. I would like to say that kind of just comes with the nature of drilling, but I do know that there were mistakes made and things we definitely could have improved on and have improved on. And we've still been drilling and aren't hitting lines. So, and another thing I would like to do if we moved to now, like just a more in-depth packet so people kind of understand what they can expect. Help, bring that opt-in rate up and in turn make it cheaper for everybody. So, I'm good on that one. Restoration efforts. So I mean, we had calls every day. I would personally reach out to them after they called City Hall or contacted me and do everything we could to not only, restore it as good as it was when we got there. And whether that was, setting sod if it were the warmer months, or, working with those homeowners and saying, we'll bring sod back in the spring if you're okay with that, or we can set seed, whatever you prefer. Sprinkler lines were usually the same day fix, because a lot of people only have those on when it's hot and they need their grass green. So we were out same day, so people weren't having to worry about that.
How are you all tracking that restorations? Were you doing tickets or anything, or so that you making sure that we're not missing anybody?
Right. I would typically, if it was as I said, sprinkler, it was like same day. If it were grass or things like that, we would keep those addresses written down, like on the board, so that they didn't get lost. And I mean, we also would drive through these neighborhoods numerous times, even after we've left, to make sure that things weren't left undone, a pothole not filled or something like that. Equipment hours, I'm not sure what was used when we got it, so I'm not sure on the equipment hours.
All of it's new.
Okay.
Brand new.
Okay. So the small drill is when we use for house shots, that's at 815 hours. Our bigger drill that we use for trunk line is at 2,066 hours. I don't know what they were at the beginning of the project. If that was something you guys wanted to track, we could do that for too. The vac truck has several different hours and mileages. It just kind of depends on what component is running on that piece of equipment at the time. The main engine with the PTO engaged, that's if it's sitting still, running the vac or the air compressor or anything like that. So it's at almost 5,000 hours. I don't know if you want me to run through all of it. Splicers, our two Inno splicers. The single fusion splicer is at 1,156 arcs, or ribbon splicers at 920, and that one does 12 splices at a time. And then we bought some cheaper splicers so that we could have a few install crews going at one time. So that second fusion splicer Brandon currently has, because he's practicing on that, so I wasn't able to get that art count on that one. But I would say the first one is, or number one is the one that I use, and so that's going to have the highest number. So 2 and 3 are going to be a bit less. I guess I kind of spoke on this. Yard complaints, we would set solder seed. During the winter, we would let people know we spring and keep track of those, obviously. We did get calls about equipment being in front of someone's driveway or in the way in some way. So we would put signs in the windows saying what crew was here, who to contact if you need it moved, like if we're in the, and it was my phone number and Kyle's phone. Sprinkler hit same day. Right away easements. This one was, it got tough because some people don't want us in their yard, and the city does have easements in certain neighborhoods, but if it were at all possible to not go into someone's yard or set a box in someone's yard, we made every effort to do that and work with those homeowners. And if it needed to be placed in a yard, we worked with those homeowners and we did our best to put it like right on the property line, out of the way on the edge, so but most of our lines do run under the sidewalk. It just kind of swings in where concrete gets expensive. Process to improve, develop a clear timeline for each stage of the process to assist community council and the fiber team. Councilman Harjo had set up JIRA for us for the first LID, and I'd really like to implement that from the beginning of the project. It was a little hard to I know that you'd set it all up. But
Right.
It was tough
To adopt it midstream was difficult.
Right. So I think if we were able to do an LID 2, that is a huge thing I would like to do. Track those things. Get an estimated time on what these things take, so that we can give a clear timeline to everybody. Checklist for all operations, meaning drilling, installing, separate ones for each one of those stages of what we're doing, so that our exactly what needs aspect of the project. I already said it. Improving the fiber information packet for homeowners, and using the drill plan that we started using towards the end of the project. It really helped kind of keep things moving quicker. Okay, we're doing this drill this day. We're doing this drill this day. This crew is potholing this section this day. That helped a ton. So, yeah.
Councilwoman Berkala, these are your questions. Is there anything left to answer?
Not right now, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you.
So first question was, how deep is the fiber buried under the blacktop? Is it deeper than 4 inches? And I showed you that on the slide earlier. The fiber conduit was bored everywhere it was board exceeds 18 inches in depth, and like I said, some of it's down to 4 feet deep. In areas like Stone Tree, War Eagle, Silverstone, where we did the micro trenching, it's all under 8 inches. So it's all deeper than the asphalt level. Then you asked about what type of fiber we have. Underground rated single armored ribbon and loose tube fiber. Danny, you could probably expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So all of the cable we use is rated to be underground in conduit. It's all armored, so it's all locatable. So dig lines and things like that, we know exactly where it is.
I'm sorry, I'm reading the first. So micro trenching went down 8 inches feet?
That's how far the blade would go
That's
down.
the
And that's as far as you guys went?
In those sections, yeah.
Yep.
I thought max was 12 inches.
I don't know.
Okay.
I know that's how deep we were on those ones. We did our best to clean those trenches out before we buried anything. That stuff as deep as possible.
Is there plans to continue using micro trenching?
In a better system, possibly, than what we were using, I think, then it's possible. I'm not opposed to whatever's going to be the cheapest option for the city and its customers. Whatever's going to be the most efficient.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Workle, I don't mean to jump in on your questions, but the trenching thing I'm very curious about. So can you expand a little bit on, you're saying in a better system?
So we flew down to Arizona and we looked at a new micro trenching system that's just been developed. It's a single stage trenching system. So you have a trenching tractor. Basically, that tractor can go down to 16 inches in depth. And then it has the back truck on it and a conduit line installed with it. So it's a one moving like a train. It trenches, vacs, lays conduit, and then they roll behind it and they seal it. That is the system that if we were going to move forward with, it'd be one that we would want to consider purchasing because it gets it to a deeper depth. It's cleaner. We don't have to worry
Faster.
about and it's way faster. So when we were in Arizona, that machine moved faster than we could walk next to it. Very impressive. The micro trench that we have now does a really good job for short, but we would never want to build an entire infrastructure with that one. Yeah.
Dare I ask what the cost on that was?
We have never received a cost.
170, wasn't it? 170?
We haven't, well, that was that demo model.
Right.
Yeah, the demo model was 170. That model's gone. That's sold down on that project, but it's in that range.
The 170?
Yeah, it'll be
That's
in that
just
range.
the tractor with the blade on it,
That's-
right?
And the back.
That's the
I
tractor.
always included the back
The
as well.
blade, the back, and then we would have to have the wheel for the fiber, which we have.
I'm glad that there's something at least a little bit
A
better.
lot of
'cause
improvements.
Inches is, boy, I feel bad whoever's going to be tearing up that road in the future.
Typically, when we resurface, we don't go that deep, so
Depends on with the soft spots and
I
all that.
understand. Absolutely. Yep.
So,
Okay. Good.
Temperature.
Okay, temperature. So the maximum exposure temperature of 158 degrees. So when we say that, that's actually the melting point of the fiber optic line. So it's kind of misleading because the line is encased in the fiber optic conduit. Does that make sense? So it's not actually ever, the fiber optic cable itself is never actually exposed to the elements. If the asphalt machine that you're referring to is running over it, it would be at a depth below the 6 inches that machine actually heats, because the shallowest we have is 8 inches, and then it would be protected inside of the conduit as well. So there's no harm that we could superheat and melt that fiber optic.
Yeah, because the asphalt recycler, I think it says, can heat up the road up to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So if that's only 158 degrees Fahrenheit, you're saying it's not an issue because it's deeper and it has the
It's encased in
conduit around it and it will not affect it. We know that.
And
Certain.
Just laws
Go
of thermal
6 inches of the
Stop.
temperature.
laws of thermodynamics
So
tell you that there's a heat sink effect at a certain rate.
Laws of thermodynamics. Okay.
Okay.
That's a fact.
All right.
So then your next statement was from Benedetti that can heat the road up to 350 degrees. We just addressed this one. It wasn't really a question, but like I said, it's only to a depth of 6 inches. All of ours is deeper, and that's encased in conduit. Your next one, the asphalt paving machine, heats the road to 300 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit according to Ben and Denny website. You didn't really ask a question there. I was looking, is there?
Why we just covered it.
Okay, and then are the additives to reconstitute the asphalt tested in desert climates? They're tested all over the world. They've been tested from the coldest to the warmest climates that exist, and they've never failed.
Didn't they say they sold a machine in Morocco?
They did,
Like
yes.
when we were out
Yeah,
there,
they're
so.
all over the world.
Like-
Yeah. So the next one are the additives to reconstitute. Oh, I think that's a double. And they're not corrosive to it, and then they would never come in contact with the fiber optic line anyway. Your question as to who would be responsible for the damage if we were doing a resurface project. If it's a city project, the city's going to be responsible for it. If it's a contracted out project, then the contractor would be responsible for it.
Contractor would be responsible for the payment to fix it.
Correct, yes.
We would be
We'd be
doing
out there
doing the
doing
actual
work.
physical work.
Danny would be in the hole going, yeah, but,
Sorry,
and
Danny.
then I wanted to clarify that the majority of the fiber conduit that we place isn't placed in the roadways unless it's a micro trenching project. Most of it's either going to be under sidewalks or in yards. So 90% of what's already been installed would never be a concern because it's not in the road. Okay?
Yeah, because I think at first there was that concern that like large trucks hitting the curb, disrupting the roads, if it's just superficial 2 inches, whatever underneath. That's all been addressed.
That
all
would
went
be
over.
terrible, but none of it's there.
Okay.
None of it's that shallow.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
And I believe that was all the questions that I was presented. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. All right, council, it is 11:58. Is all for this workshop. Were you good to go?
Council.
Quick question. Hey, Bruce, what did training consist of for the city of, when it came to their fiber? For staff?
It was pretty extensive. I mean, the real issue here, I think everybody knows this, is the scale at which you're doing this is pretty small. So a commercial contractor can be competitive, but only at a much larger scale. And, when you look at the budget amounts you're spending and the way the take rate and the commitments from the property owners work, you're working in a pretty small area with a limited number of addresses. And at that point, you're most efficient to do that in-house. But it looked very similar to exactly what your team's going through there. They learn as they go, and they're dedicated. They want to do a good job. They want to be at their job for a long time, and they want a good relationship with the residents, so they care. So I will tell you that having worked in both environments, private contractors doing large scale projects and smaller projects where it's, municipal employees in general take a much greater interest in the long-term relationship with the citizens. Now, I'm not saying that in any way disparaging about a private entity. It's just that you typically run a much stronger quality assurance program because you have to ride them to get issues fixed. So they will still do it, and they can move at speed and do things pretty efficiently, but only if it's a large project. So I'm a little off the rails, but I think I would summarize the initial question by saying it looks much like what you've got there. It's hands-on, somebody that wants to learn, somebody that wants to be part of the city municipally, wants a municipal job and wants to serve the community. They'll get in there and they'll learn, and you have to teach them. So.
Councilman, I would follow it up with, we do have 2 personnel that we sent to be professionally trained on the drill operations, because we did at the outset have a lot of line hits and we wanted that, so we got them trained.
Okay, so there is some official training going on,
Absolutely,
not just shadowing and everything, because I guess in my HR mind, I'm sitting here thinking, well, if you have retention and someone leaves, well, you're losing that experience. So where is a standard operating procedure, or what training are we giving to employees that's going to allow them to keep on with that, so we're not hitting next setback of now we're, inexperienced again, now the timelines are getting pushed out and all that. So
I will say Vermeer, who we have our drills, or we bought our drills through, have been amazing. As soon as we get a new driller, or we need, some extra guys down here, either from Boise or out from Utah, to do training here on site as well, and that they're available anytime. Honestly, it's never been a problem trying to get them out here. So.
okay.
Staff, would you mind sharing that presentation with the council? by emailing
I will
you.
email it as soon as we're done.
Awesome,
I was gonna
thank you.
throw that out at the end.
Thank you.
All right. Any other things, council? Meeting adjourned. Danny, Chris, and Dee.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you guys for all your
Thank you.
questions.